your skill.
Be forewarned if you haven't been already, the hottest thing in the 12 and under set is coming soon to a theater near you. Pokemon the movie joins Pokemon the video game.
2 million years ago, the first known Pokemon walked the Earth. Scientists thought many were extinct, like the dinosaurs, because only fossils had ever been found. That's until now. A remote island has been discovered in the South Seas, an island where the Pokemon fossils have come to life. Welcome back everyone to 3 Lines TCG. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive over the fossil set, breaking down its history, its card lineup, its many unique errors, and why it remains one of the most iconic pieces of Pokemon history 2 decades later. If you haven't seen my previous deep dives, definitely go check them out. We did Jungle and we've done Base Set prior to today, and I will continue to do more deep dives. We've kind of just been going in order, so I'll probably continue with that, with Pokemon. If you do enjoy this video, please make sure you leave a like and let me know what you thought down below. I can do different card games. I've been toying with that idea. I may do deep dives over some of the One Piece sets, as well as Yu-Gi-Oh! And other things, who knows. But if you do enjoy this, like I say, please make sure you let me know down below. And without further ado, let's go and get into it. Let's start with the basics. Just like the previous 2 sets, Base Set and Jungle, the fossil set was created by Wizards of the Coast. Now, the official release date in English was on October 10th, 1999, and in Japanese the set was actually called Mystery of the Fossils, and its official release date was on June 21st, 1997. This set is the Pokemon TCG's 3rd expansion, and officially completed the original 150 Pokemon Pokédex. That's of course in TCG format. In the last deep dive we talked about the Jungle set and how it was based on the Kanto Safari Zone. Can you take a guess of what the fossil set is all about? Yeah, that's right, fossils. No, this was actually quite significant because the fossil Pokemon were super unique and actually quite popular at the time. Definitely the 2 most iconic fossil Pokemon were definitely Aerodactyl and Kabutops. I'd still say to this day they are the 2 most iconic fossil Pokemon. Let's go ahead and talk about them first. For me, Aerodactyl has always been a cool Pokemon. I think if you were a dinosaur fan as a kid, which most kids are, and I definitely was, then you liked Aerodactyl because it was the first, prehistoric, it was a pterodactyl. It was the first prehistoric dinosaur reference that you've seen in Pokemon. So I think most people naturally gravitated towards liking Aerodactyl. And not only that, but in the episode of the anime, Aerodactyl is responsible for Charmeleon evolving into Charizard. So Charizard, who arguably is the most popular Pokemon in the entire franchise, he doesn't exist really without Aerodactyl. Not to mention, both Aerodactyl and Kabutops felt like pseudo-legendaries as a kid, because they weren't Pokemon you could just catch, right? You had to choose between the Dome Fossil and Helix Fossil early on in the game if you wanted a Kabutops, and you would need an old Amber Fossil for Aerodactyl, which was something you can't really use until you get pretty far into the game. I know there's probably ways you can speedrun it and get it much earlier, but as a kid, I always remember having a full team when finally getting Aerodactyl. You would get it and it would be like level 5, and I don't know, at that time I was Blastoise brain, I would never really want to replace any of the core, party that I had at the time. And I also think this is why Omastar probably gets a pretty bad rap, because most people in general would choose the Dome Fossil, because that's the one that ends up being Kabutops, over the Helix Fossil, which is the Omastar. And, when you translate that back to cards, it kind of makes sense. I just feel like Kabutops and Aerodactyl have far more popular artworks than the likes of Omastar. So all of that's to say, Aerodactyl was a pretty cool prehistoric Pokemon to headline the fossil set. Kabuto didn't pull any punches either, another very relatively popular Pokemon. The thing with Kabutops is the design looks equally awesome and terrifying at the same time, right? You've got the big scythes instead of forearms. I don't know what it is about arthropods, the exoskeleton sea bugs. They just look terrifying, right? I saw a video where these sea bugs actually replace the tongue of a fish. They're terrifying creatures, and to make one a Pokemon, it was a very interesting choice. But honestly, despite all that, Kabutops had some crazy cool vintage artworks. Personally, the first one's obviously the OG, right? This is from Fossil, this particular artwork, and obviously a lot of people like the original. But I think if you compare it to Crystal Kabutops, Shining Kabutops, I mean, even the Neo Discovery Kabutops, I think they all look just a little bit cooler in my opinion. You can never go wrong with the rookie card, right? You can never go wrong with the original, so I'll always love the Fossil print, but I think those are the 3 that I mentioned just edge that artwork just a little bit more, in my opinion. Aerodactyl and Kabutops aren't the only two iconic cards in this set. You've also got Lapras, Dragonite, and my personal favorite, Gengar. Similar to the Jungle set, Fossil is actually quite small. It only has 62 total cards in the English printing and 48 cards in the Japanese. The holographic set list for Fossil consists of Aerodactyl, Articuno, Ditto, Dragonite, Gengar, Haunter, Hitmonlee, Hypno, Kabutops, Lapras, Magneton, Moltres, Muk, Raichu, and Zapdos. Just like in the Jungle set, Wizards did the non-holo versions for the Fossil rares as well, so that's 15 holos in total, 15 non-holos, 16 uncommons, and 16 commons. Out of all the holos in the Fossil set, which one is your favorite? Let me know down below. My personal favorite has to be Gengar. I'm obviously a big fan of Magneton and Raichu as well if you've been around the channel for a long time, but it's just a cool set in general, but let me know what your favorite is down below. Fossil was also the last set to utilize the Starlight holofoil pattern. The holofoils were later changed into the Cosmos holo, which obviously is most famous for being introduced in base set 2. Which I'm convinced is the only reason people like base set 2. I've just always thought of that set as a reprint set, so I've never enjoyed it. But if you enjoy the Cosmos holofoil pattern, then I get why you would actually enjoy base set 2 cards. Unsurprisingly, Wizards did leave a few errors for us in the Fossil set, one of which being cards with the Cosmos holo pattern instead of the Starfoil pattern. Speaking of errors, let's move on to what keeps me up at night as a vintage card collector. That's right, the pickiest part of collecting, error cards. Before we dive into each confirmed error card, I do want to just mention that Zapdos probably has the most unique errors out of any vintage card I've seen in this particular set, definitely, but maybe in general. I don't know, I can't really think of any other cards on the top of my head that have so many different print variants. It's at least 5, but there may be more when we go over the Misprint guide, which we will be doing here shortly. So just like what I did in the Jungle Deep Dive, we did go over the Misprint guide, the Master Misprint guide on the Elite forums. We're going to do the same thing with this, just because, you know, we can go through the pictures, I can kind of react to it for the first time. I haven't really seen too much, like I kind of saw the first couple pictures, things that I've actually known prior to doing research on this topic, and then we'll kind of get down the list where things get a little wacky. But before we go into that, let's talk about the promo cards and other additional cards that were included in the Fossil set. We mentioned Aerodactyl earlier and talked about how iconic of a Fossil Pokemon it was at the time. Well, Aerodactyl was the featured Pokemon for Fossil on both the pack artworks and the booster box artwork. Aerodactyl was also the pre-release promo card for this set. So just like Clefable and Jungle, this version of the Aerodactyl Holo Rare has the word pre-release in all caps stamped to the artwork. What makes Aerodactyl a unique promo card compared to some of the other vintage WotC promos at the time is that there's actually 2 different print versions, one of which is gold and the other is brown. Now, when it comes to telling the difference between the two, the gold has a Cosmos holo foil pattern instead of the Starlight foil pattern. That's the best way to determine the difference. You don't even really have to look at the pre-release the actual print there. That's how you determine whether one is gold or brown. The gold basically is the international printing of the first edition pre-release Aerodactyl. That's why it has the Cosmos holofoil pattern. I will say though, I have the brown. I've only ever been able to find the brown. The gold is going to be much harder to find. Another promo card from the Fossil set was the Top Deck Magazine W Promo Kabuto. Now, we mentioned these magazine promo cards in the Jungle Deep Dive, and in that set it was the Pikachu, but for Fossil this was Kabuto, and it was from the Top Deck Magazine 1999 December issue. Similar to the Pikachu promo from Jungle, this promo also had a gold foil W stamp on the artwork. Next up, we have 5 exclusive cards that we're only going to briefly mention right now because we will mention them again in the sealed product section of the video, but we're of course talking about the 5 exclusive cards that come with the Thunderstorm gift box, which consists of a Cosmos Holo Zapdos, Raichu, Golduck, Psyduck, and Energy Search. What makes these cards unique is their copyright dates. On the bottom of the card, you can see that it shows 1999 to 2000 instead of just the regular 1999. Now, the last thing to mention in this section is the Australian print of the Fossil set. So, in other words, there is an entire print of just the Australian prints, and that means all of the holo rares actually have the Cosmos holo foil pattern instead of the Starlight foil pattern, and then all the non-holos, that means rares, uncommons, and commons, all have the 99 to 2000 copyright dates on the bottom of the cards instead of 1999. Now keep in mind, the holo rares for the Australian print still have the 1999 copyright date at the bottom. So technically, when I look at my Zapdos collection for Fossil, I only need one more, and the last one I need is technically the Australian print version, i.e. a Cosmos holo foil pattern with the 1999 copyright date on the bottom. I've also seen that be referred to as the WotC employee-only Zapdos, so the only thing I can't really find is the difference between the two, because they look the exact same. They both have a Cosmos holo, they both have the 99 copyright date on the bottom. The only thing I've read online is that the cardstock may be different, so a lot of the Australian print versions were printed with a different cardstock, so I guess that's what they're saying would be the way to tell the difference, but again, that's going to be hard to tell like on an eBay listing, because that's something that you really have to see in person, or at least under a very good light. The same could be said about the Thunderstorm gift box cards. They of course have the 1999 to 2000 copyright date, but so do all of the Australian prints, so telling the difference between those two is going to be difficult. Again, might just be the cardstock is the only difference, but I guess that would mean that those particular cards, right, like the Raichu and the Golduck and the Psyduck, those should be easier to find in general, because there was the Thunderstorm gift box edition and the Australian print, right? So they basically have two different prints. But the only way you can really absolutely know the difference is if you know the person that you got it from said they got it specifically from the gift box or specifically got it from an Australian pack. Alright, so we are on Elite Forum. We are going to go ahead and go over the Master Misprint Guide for Fossil. 200 plus Voto guide going over all the corrected misprint errors in the Fossil set. Like I said, we did this with Jungle before. I think this is the best way of showing errors, to be honest, because we get picture examples. These guys always do a really good job too. Josh Odd Collection and Misprint Jeff. Everyone on Elite Forum. This is how I get 90% of my information, by the way. Everyone on Elite Forum is just like big brain. So these are just the best ways to find these type of error cards. We can react, we can go over them. I haven't seen a lot, like I've seen like a lot of these, so we'll just go over the first one here. Gold Cigar Stain. That is a very popular, I'm not going to say common, but a very popular error in the sense that a lot of the vintage sets have this error. This is basically a bleed through the border of the card, so you can see it's like an error with the bleed from the borders. It's gone down into the actual name of the card, but this is pretty sick with Gengar here. We have two different copies, two different versions. I think that's probably the requirement for a card to be considered an error card. It needs to have multiple copies. You can't just have a one-off and then assume that that is just a guaranteed error. Okay, so we'll do the... Okay, so next we've got the Yellow Arm Back Hickey Gengar. So this just looks like it's very significant on the back. You literally have what looks to be a yellow elbow, which is pretty cool. But it's really only noticeable from the back here. This is what it looks like from the front. I mean, you can kind of see a stain on on Gengar itself. But based on where this is, it should be on the top of the card, so it should be like up here. But I can't really tell from the front. I could be blind though, it's very possible. But yeah, I don't know if this is normal. It just looks like Gengar itself has like almost like a black elbow on the actual artwork itself. They all have that as well. But otherwise, we're looking at the back of the card here. Pretty cool. I've never seen that one. Now we've got the Blue Stained Haunter. I have seen this is probably I would say the most iconic error in the Fossil set. This is one that is actually a huge chase of mine. Like, I would love one of these. I could only find one on eBay, I think, and this is when I was looking, to be fair, so it was a while ago now. But the only ones I was ever to be able to find on eBay were actually graded. I would love to have this raw. Obviously, the condition is going to be, you know, really shoddy, but that's fine. I would definitely, if I saw this as a kid, I would just assume that it's just damage. Like, someone spilled, you know, something on the actual card itself. So this is basically the cyan ink is just like bleeding out of the artwork. It looks really cool. These pictures are really well taken. These ones, this one is like, that's what it looks like in the certain shiny of the light. I really like that. It's definitely one of my favorites, but it's going to be impossible to get. But that is a popular one. And then you've got the White Stained Haunter, which I actually haven't seen this one. So this is like, it just has a white stain in the actual artwork just under his hand here. That's the close-up. It's pretty cool. Gold Stained Haunter. So, yeah, this is kind of similar to the cigar stain. It's just additional gold border ink, so it just bled through. And these ones are quite significant. These ones are quite big. Like, you're gonna have ones like this, right? That it's still the same thing, but it's just barely a strip. And then you've got one like this, which basically takes up the whole artwork. So, a pretty cool error. Like, I will give it that. And there's definitely lots of copies. So, I guess if you were gonna run into an error, you'd probably run into this one over the others. But Hitmonlee, Staymonlee, Cigar Stain, Hitmonlee. Here we go. This isn't quite the one I'm talking about yet, but same thing as the Haunter we just saw, but it's on a Hitmonlee. So that's kind of the theme, I guess, with some of these errors, right? It's the same error. It's just going to be on different cards. So, although we've really only seen Hitmonlee and Haunter, it's very possible that it could be on the other holos as well in Fossil. Don't error Hitmonlee, corrected design error unlimited. So I'm just assuming it's just no apostrophe on don't. Yeah, so don't there. Let's see. It should have an apostrophe, right? Yeah, it does. Okay. So that's pretty cool. You know, that's something you'd have to really look for. You'd have to, you know, pay attention to the text to see that one. So that's a cool one. And we've got the gold cigar stain Lapras. So yeah, I was right. So that gold stain is going to be on other holos. So it has been confirmed on Lapras, Hitmonlee, and Haunter so far, and Gengar. Zapdos. Here we go. Now we're getting into Zapdos territory. This should be good. Evolution box holo error Zapdos design error. All first editions have this error. Yes, the design was corrected mid unlimited print. So this basically every first edition Zapdos has this. You can also find it on the unlimited print as well. But basically the top left corner is non-holoed. So that's basically all that error is. If you check your collection, every first edition should have that. And then it's actually a bit more rarer if you find the unlimited version, because then it was later corrected, and then obviously you can see that that's corrected there. So when we go over the pricing of a lot of these cards, this is where it was quite hard with PSA, because they actually consider it the corrected holo. So when I talk about like PSA 10 pricing of that particular Zapdos, it's going to be the corrected pricing, not necessarily the error pricing, because I don't know how many of those you're going to actually specifically find in PSA under a name other than like, you know, Zapdos holo foil or whatever. So that just a warning there, but that's fine. All right, Cosmos holo obstruction bleeds unlimited. Oh, I like that. Oh, that's my favorite one so far. That's dope. It's like a strip of Cosmos Cosmo foil. So that's cool because it's like you're doubling up if you get it on the artwork. But this one looks sick because that honestly, I mean, it looks like damage because it's like kind of, you know, like the black in there with the, but you know, you got the, it looks fake. Like it looks like it's a sticker on top of it, right? But you can tell that the top of the card is all legit, and it still has a Cosmos foil. So this is the 1999 to 2001. So this is specifically for the theme deck. I guess also technically the third print as well. But yeah, that's pretty cool. That's kind of my favorite one. I like that a lot. Okay, let's move on. Scratch error Zap. Oh my god, there's more Zap. Oh, okay. I like that. So this reminds me of Pinsir in the Jungle set, right? Because Pinsir had a sort of similar thing with the scratch on the actual logo. This guy's got an insane collection. He's got like 7 of these things. Graded, 3 different companies, and then 3 raw as well. So sorry, that's 6 little miscount there, misinput. Yeah, the scratches on that, but it's very significant, right? Like you'd think that you could maybe reproduce that, but it's kind of hard to, right? Because they all have the same length. It's all very, very particular, so it's a clear error in manufacturing. So yeah, that's cool. I like that. I've never seen those though. I've never seen those in the wild. I've never seen any of these in the wild, to be fair. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the Hickeys. These are very common with the older, usually non-holos. That's usually when they show up. The one I think we talked about in the Jungle set was Persian. I remember the Persian being really sick because it had like, it's almost like, you know, it's like in that background where there's trees and it looks like an apple, but it's actually just a Hickey print. So we've got a Ditto here. You can see that in the background. That's pretty cool. We've got the Black Stain Arbok. mean, that just looks like a bacteria smudge or something. Like, I would definitely consider that just, like, damage if I was a kid. So, yeah, I've never seen that one. That's pretty cool. Weakness ... sand slash. Okay. This one would be, like, much harder to notice. I mean, I do go through a lot of bulk and especially a lot of vintage, so I'd maybe pick up on it, but this basically is just, there's a bunch of black dots in between weakness and resistance on the bottom here. That's pretty cool. You know, not as, yeah, it seems like only Sandslash has that. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone else have those particular dot patterns, so, yeah, it's just a misprint there. Seadra Blue Ink Hickey. Oh, that's dope. I like that. Looks like a little whirlpool in the text there on the bottom. So I do like that. That's pretty cool. It works well with Seadra. Yeah, it's kind of harder to see on that one, but yeah, good lighting. It's good. Sludge Barrel Grimer. So I assume it's just this. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've never seen that. Yeah, on the actual barrel itself, like basically those white marks and stuff. Very cool. Yeah, because this is what it should look like. So it legitimately, it looks like it's a slimy barrel, which, you know, would make sense. It's a Grimer. That's really cool, actually. Sludge Barrel Grimer. It could become in one of my favorites. This one is, ooh, Sky Hickey. That actually looks really good because it sort of blends in with the background, and it's almost like it's bang on in the middle of that crossroads up there. I do like that one. So it's a Hickey though, so it's a pretty, like I say, a popular error. The Smoke Ring Horsey. So just basically the same thing as the Arbok, but in the actual ink of the Horsey there, which is pretty cool. The Horsey? Horsey? What is... Oh, I see. So it's like a Hickey circle on the text of the name, so it's H-O-O. Okay. I see that. Little Horsey. Slash Error Krabby, Broken Foot Krabby. Okay, I think it's just, when it says Broken Foot, it's just talking about the logo. There's nothing on his actual legs, right? No, that artwork looks the same. But that's pretty cool. Again, this is kind of similar to that, similar to the Zapdos one, but also to the Pincer one from Jungle, like, just basically an obstruction with the logo itself. This basically just looks like the other part of the symbol. It just did not print. Oh, no, actually, it shouldn't look like that anyway, so it's just basically got a line through it, so that's pretty cool. And then we've got a Black Hickey Krabby, so this is just on the length, so just below the artwork on the text there. Bloody Claw Error Krabby, Magenta Print Hickey. Oh, that's cool. That's cool, I like that. Because that does actually... It does actually look like his leg is bleeding. That's kind of cool. So it's just a red Hickey basically on his legs there, just under his pincer. That's cool. Gold Stain Omnite, so just a Gold Stain Hickey there underneath, just next to Water Gun. Oh, that's a cool one. The Psychic Symbol Stain for Slowpoke. I do collect Slowpoke, so this could be a grail. That would be really nice. That looks pretty dope too. I like that. Oh, this guy's got 4 of them. And you can tell they're all different cards, right? Different quality there. All different conditions. And identical errors. So that's kind of how you know. Very nice. Okay, so special set errors, Hollow Shift. Okay, so these are going to be not, again, like I keep saying, these are going to be very common. They're not common to find, but you'll see the same error actually in like several different card games, not even just Pokemon. There's a guy I follow called Misprint Shark on Instagram. Shout out to you. He does a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh misprints, and they all have this. They all have this like misaligned Hollow Shift, and it looks really cool. So we'll go ahead and go over these. We've got Articuno. This Dragonite one looks cool because you can see the wing in the background there. But this is basically just a Hollow Shift. Some are more obvious than others, right? Like obviously these are very, very obvious. Like this is very significant with the Haunter. But then there's probably going to be one, like this Articuno is nowhere near as bad, right? It's just the top half. So this is very common. It's just basically how, I guess, when it was printed, it was just misaligned. And some it's going to be extremely OC, and some are going to be a little less obvious. Like, this Magneton is probably the least obvious one, right? Like, from like, looking at it from this perspective, you can't even see the difference. When you zoom in, you can just see on the top, there is a bit of a hollow shift, right? And that would be significant to see in person, but compared to some of these, right, this is, like, very obvious. But this one's a little less obvious. This Hypno is about the same as the Magneton, but just a bit more, so you can tell quite easily. But those are pretty cool, especially getting it graded too. Like, they don't even consider, but this is what I'm saying, it's hard to like research these things because they don't even consider it an error. They don't even specify it's an error. Well, no, they do here. Sorry, they do say error there. I hate CGC anyway, so I don't pay attention to that. But yeah, it does say error actually. Interesting. Water obstruction errors, water obstruction, unlimited. Yeah, again, this is the type that I would be like, this is just a damaged card. Like, if I didn't realize this was an actual error. So kind of similar to the Cosmos foil obstruction with the Zapdos. It's very similar, but it's just with the other foils. Like, this one is nowhere near as significant, but it's just on the bottom of the card. Oh, that Raichu, that's a dope picture, actually. That's very cool. And then you've got some there. Like, you know, without them matching, like, you would just assume that that's just damage, you know. This Magneton, wow. That's incredible. God. I'm telling you, this is what keeps me up at night, dude. I gotta get my hands on these, but it's gonna be almost impossible. Okay. This just looks like it's Photoshop now, but this is pretty dope. I feel like with the commons, it's just going to be blanked out. Like, you can kind of still see furry swipes there on this one. Let's see if we can see. Oh! No way! Oh my god, that's sick. So this is with the Magma artwork, but it's like black and white in the background. Dude, that would be such a... If I could get that black and white, the entire artwork, oh, that would go so hard. Oh. What do we got here? So this one's... Yeah, so some of them completely blank out whatever's in the background, and some of them still have it. Like, this one's cool, because it actually is blue. It kind of matches the actual artwork itself, the color scheme. Those are cool. Just like basically white dots on the card. Misregistered errors, misaligned print layers, black, magenta, and yellow. Unlimited non-hollow rares. Okay, yeah, so this is... They're misaligned, but they're also basically... It almost looks highlighted. So, like, this obviously looks much darker. And you can kind of see it's misaligned because you can see the white line going down on the bottom of these. So it's kind of, it's been shifted. Yeah. So all of these have that white, yeah, that white line on the right side because they're basically slightly shifted to the left when they were printed. So just misaligned. A lot of those are the misaligned ones. Yeah, that one. You can't even, like, the actual artwork looks blurry, right? Like, everything else isn't blurry here, but the artwork is blurry because it's just misaligned. So that is probably... yeah, that could just maybe have too much ink on the actual artwork, and everything else looks fine. It's kind of a weird error. Because that one doesn't look as misaligned, right? Because it doesn't have the white line on it. I don't know. Whatever, we'll move on. Blurry text errors. Oh, that hurts my eyes. We're not going to keep looking at that. So that one's not as bad. That one actually makes me think, did one of my contacts fall out? You know what I mean? Like, that one could maybe, I would think it's me. But this one, I'm either drunk or, you know, it's an error. That's pretty cool, though. Like, it's cool that the actual holo is fine, like the artwork is fine, but the text is specifically really blurry. Oh, like that one. That one you're actually seeing double. Yeah, I would just name this the drunk error. This is just what it looks like when you look at your vintage collection when you're A little wasted. White overspray hollows. Okay, yeah, additional white ink. So this basically is like almost the kind of like the sun. You know, people can recreate that with the sun. What do they call them? When they leave them out in the sun damage ones, and they kind of go all wonky and they have different colors. This is basically this, but it's just specifically additional white ink. So like obviously this Lapras looks very bright. It literally looks like you turn the brightness up. And some are a little bit less significant than the others, but there is like a white aura around this Dragonite. This one's pretty obvious too. Lots of white in there. And then I'm assuming, yeah, there's yellow oversprays as well. So there's white oversprays, then yellow oversprays. The yellow is going to be a little bit harder, I would say. Like this you can kind of tell. But there are quite a lot of yellows in general in this set, like Raichu and Dragonite and stuff like that. So this you can tell because it bleeds in from the artwork itself, right? Like you can actually see that on the right-hand side. You can see it here as well, so that you really want to be looking at the borders here. You can definitely tell there's a significant white overprint, or sorry, yellow overprint in this case there. That's a kind of a bad picture. You can't really see it, but you can just see on the top there, right? Like just a bit too much yellow. Can we notice this with the white on? No. With the white on this one, I think it is just the artwork by the looks of it. Yeah. Okay. Those are a little harder, I would say, to see. And I think those are just going to be hard to, like, picture. Like, those are hard to capture. Maybe in person it'd be a little easier. So, white line hollows, missing hollow edge. Okay, so this one's cool. Okay, this one's cool because there's an actual difference between... It almost feels like the cardstock is different. So what we're looking at here is on this left-hand side, right? So they should all... And some are going to be thicker than others, but... Yeah, like this one's quite significant. So you got the... like, and I think... Ah, look, yeah, so they actually show you. Look at the... That's how significant of a difference. It looks like it's a different card almost. It looks like there's a card on top of a card, but... Yeah, like right there. It's like that's the base level, and then you've got on top of it. So it does look like almost two different cards. Yeah, it's a cool error. I do like that one. And some are more obvious than others. And if you're not looking for that, you probably wouldn't be able to tell. Like this, it's just the corner, but it's pretty cool. It's a cool error. So what do they call that one? White line hollow? Yeah, okay. And it looks like it's just with the hollows? Yeah, it looks like it's just with the hollows. Inverted back errors, upside down sheets. Yeah, okay, this is again, a pretty common error. Every time you have an inverted back, they are usually completely OC. Like, they look more like this than they do this, I would say. Right? They're definitely going to be OC no matter what, but it almost looks like this, right? Like, you'll see another card that they just completely, misaligned and miscut. So, this is usually what the backs look like for those type of things. It's a really cool error, though. Because, like, the front looks fine. I mean, obviously, they're going to be beat up in condition. Because, 90% of these errors will be. Because no one, had any value, held any value to any of these if they had them as a kid. You'd be more inclined to think that it's a fake card when you see that type of stuff, usually. But, yeah, pretty significant. That's pretty cool. Psyduck, Recycle, and Krabby obstructions. Cyan layer obstruction, tape, plastic wrapper, question mark. Oh, so yeah, this is actually harping on what I'm talking about with the... I think I just actually saw it. With the Crown Royal Leaf obstruction, yeah. So this is almost like someone accidentally put a piece of paper under the printer when it's stamped, type of thing. Right, so it's almost like a piece of plastic was on top of the card while it was pressed. And so it's almost been implanted into the actual artwork. This one looks dope. Like that actually goes really well with the particular card, Recycle. This one just looks actually like Psyduck is having an aneurysm. Like that actually blends in quite well. And the Psyduck one, the Krabby one is kind of. It's not. It's that one's kind of different, right? Because that one's more right to left, where these kind of focus more on the artwork. Where this one is like. Not nowhere near as I mean, it's noticeable, but it's nowhere near as bad as the other ones. Pretty cool. What's this one? So just a zoom in look. Yeah, I can't really make out what the product is, but this is the one I was talking about this entire time. I knew that they would throw it in here eventually, but this is the most famous error, I would say, the Crown Royal Leaf Obstruction Hitmonlee. I feel like we maybe talked about this in base set, or either base set or jungle, but I think the story is that the factory that was producing the cards at the time either also produced cigars or was just next to a cigar shop, and maybe one of the workers had a cigar and accidentally, like, you know, like I was saying earlier with the other one of the wrappers actually went in there. I think this is the only one that's ever been found. Maybe two, like maybe there's two, maybe these are two individual cards, but I think this is the one of one that I'm really talking about. But it is legit, and it's just really, it's a really cool error because you can actually see the brand name of the cigar shop or cigar company. So it's a pretty cool card, and that's probably one of the most infamous ones, I would say. Like, if you've never heard of fossil errors, you just errors in general, this is probably up there as one of the grails. I know a lot of content creators, I feel like a couple years ago were geeking over this one, so you've maybe seen that one. Red Tape Fossil Lapras pack, tape from end of booster pack roll unlimited. Yeah, I really struggle with these ones because I think these could be faked, but in this particular case, it's like legitimately on the pack itself, you know, so it isn't like tape over it, it's like the actual pack is tape, basically, so, because the bottom is still the wrapper, so it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool one. I don't think I've ever seen this one, though, so that's very, very unique. That could also be like a one of one. And that, I believe, is it. That's all the official ones. There's a couple comments here. Let's just see. So this one is quite interesting because this has basically a dot print on footprints. I guess this is, what, this is sludge? Is this muck? Yeah, muck error. Okay. So that could be a new one. These ones are interesting. These are usually factory lines. I'm not sure if anyone's actually going to consider this an error. But those are pretty common, just in general, factory line sort of misprints, but definitely not pre-marked line for that scissors in the background. Yeah, that would be really funny if he just cut it in half and then glued it back together. Alright, well, that is the entire misprint guide. Let's go ahead and get back to the deep dive. It may be hard to believe, but back when this set was first released, Mew was actually the talk of the town, not Charizard. I actually mentioned this briefly in the base set deep dive a while ago, but Mew was a Pokemon that was actually intended to be unobtainable in the video games. Mew was first discovered via a glitch in the game, and sort of due to all its hype, it ended up being released as an event-only promotional exclusive, so that was a really big deal back in the day. No, you know, you couldn't get Mew, and so the only way you could get it was through a actual promo. You actually had to go to an event to get it, which most people, you know, if you were 8, couldn't do. Keep in mind release dates when you think about this, right? So Mew's first appearance was actually in the opening credits of the anime intro, but otherwise we don't see Mew or really know anything about Mew until the first Pokemon movie. So let's take a second and just look at the timeline perspective of this, right? So the anime first aired in the US on September 8th, 1998. So obviously the infamous intro for Pokemon, you do see Mew and you see Mewtwo, but you're wondering when are they going to get involved in the show, because you at this point you're watching it and you don't ever actually get to meet them. So, and then the video games come out, right? So then you've got video games Red and Blue. They start to become available in America around the same time as the show's release, but it's officially later that month, so September 28th of 1998. So now people are both playing the game and watching the show at the same time, and although they know that Mew exists, right, because they've seen Mew in the intro, no one's really ever been able to find any information about it. Within a year of these two releases, the anime and the video games, Pokemon becomes a very well-known and popular Nintendo franchise, right? So you had the introduction to the card game next, right, with base set releasing in January of 1999. But as we know, it took a couple months for a lot of those products to actually make it to retail stores, and then you had the Jungle release in the summer of that year. So before October 1999, when the Fossil set was released, fans outside of Japan were very curious about Mew. So November of 1999, November 10th to be exact, the English version of the first movie by Warner Bros. Released in the US and other countries, right? This is probably, this is definitely the most famous movie in the franchise. People still talk about the Pikachu Ash crying scene, like a family member passed away, right? Like, it was such a big deal. I know this was like my first introduction really to Pokemon, to be honest. Like, I definitely watched this film before I played the games, or even I think even got the cards, to be honest, because this was really my true introduction to it. This movie not only talks on topics like cloning and the ethics behind like genetic modification, but it also finally introduces the rest of the world to the legendary Pokemon Mew. You finally get to see Mew. All of this to say that the fossil set actually introduced Mew into the card game. As I mentioned earlier, the Japanese version of the fossil set was known as the Mystery of the Fossils. Although this set had far less cards than the English printing, the Japanese version included a Mew as one of the holos, where the English version did not. So just based on the Japanese release date alone, we knew about Mew existing on a card since 1997. The English equivalent to this card was the WotC number 8 Mew promo that has both a non-holo and holo version. However, this card wasn't released until the Pokemon League's introduction, which was formed January 8th in the year 2000. In other words, this was the league play or competitive play, right? The non-holo version of this Mew was actually given away for free where these Pokemon League events were held, and the holo version could only be obtained by earning enough points in the Pokemon League events. These were mass-produced, however, so although they seem quite exclusive, you can definitely find these quite often and also quite cheap. So as you can see, the hype for Mew has actually been going quite strong since the late 90s, starting with, of course, the anime intro, then going into the first movie. Even today, it's extremely popular. The most popular Mew card right now, I would definitely say, is the Bubble Mew. So that's a card from Paldean Fates, and the reason why it's so popular, not only is it just a beautiful artwork, but it does depict Mew coming out of the water in the bubble, right? That's basically why it's called Bubble Mew. It's basically referencing the first movie, which is basically the first time you really get to meet Mew and see her personality and everything else. Let's move on now to the sealed product that came with the Fossil set. Starting with the packs. Fossil had 3 different pack artworks. The Pokemon on those packs were Lapras, Aerodactyl, and Zapdos. Now, the Japanese pack artwork features way more Pokemon, and it's on a volcano landscape. I love this pack artwork. You've got the fossil Pokemon coming out the water, with the Kabutops and the Tentacruel, and then the Aerodactyl flying in the background next to the volcano. I don't know, it's just a beautiful artwork. It's definitely one of my favorites. Fossil had booster boxes as well, of course. The English version has a Aerodactyl on the front cover with Danger in all caps printed on the top right of the box. The Japanese version has the legendary birds on the front cover, and it reminds me a lot of how the ETBs for Hidden Fates look. Just like the Jungle set, Fossil came with 2 theme decks. The first being Bodyguard. Bodyguard was actually structured around grass type and fighting type Pokemon, so each theme deck contains 60 cards, just like I said in the last couple deep dives. They have damage counters. This one had an Aerodactyl coin, a rulebook, and a card list. Bodyguard's artwork has a coughing on the front cover, and the holo in this theme deck is Muck. The other theme deck is Lockdown. Now, Lockdown consists of water and fire type Pokemon, and it sports a beautiful Magmar on the front cover. If you didn't know already, I find Magmar artworks to just be quite underrated. I do collect Magmar artworks, and all of that to say, I think this theme deck would be a super cool piece for a sealed collection, or like I say, a Magmar collector like myself. Actually, when we went over my buddy Brandon's PC, he actually had one, so I'll probably end up showing footage in this video, but I do find that to be one of his favorite, like, in my opinion, some of the coolest pieces in someone's collections when they get these really unique theme decks. The last thing worth mentioning is that the holo rare in this theme deck is a Lapras. When we discussed error cards, I mentioned the different prints for Zapdos. Now, one of those holo prints was from the pre-constructed theme deck known as the Tempest theme deck. Now, the Tempest theme deck was a sealed component of the Thunderstorm gift box. The Thunderstorm gift box was actually released a little later on, coming out in between the release dates of Gym Heroes and Gym Challenge, which was between August and October of the year 2000, so I would assume the gift box was released in September of 2000. The Thunderstorm gift box contains a Tempest theme deck, 3 booster packs, which has Fossil, Team Rocket, and Gym Heroes, and the Pokemon Play It version 2 CD. It also has a playmat, deck building tips, a Pikachu coin, and a felt deck bag. The Tempest theme deck was actually a very unique theme deck at the time. It actually contained cards from 5 different sets, those being Base Set, Jungle, Fossil, Team Rocket, and Gym Heroes, but this theme deck was actually more famously known for the Cosmos Holo Zapdos that was in there. The last 2 things I want to talk about in this deep dive before we finish today is let's go over the 3rd print of Fossil set, which is technically the Australian print, and then lastly we'll go over all the prices, so you can have an idea of what it would set you back if you wanted to start collecting this set. We'll do raw prices, so if you're like me and you collect in the binders mainly, then you'll have an idea of what each one cost, first edition and unlimited, and then we'll go over like pop counts. We'll do like the graded versions as well, just so you have an idea of the price fluctuation between some of the graded cards in this set. The first and most obvious difference between the 3rd print Fossil cards versus the normal prints is that the booster packs and booster boxes have a red color font for the word Pokemon instead of the normal yellow. We saw this actually in Jungle, and honestly I've always preferred the red font versions for the vintage packs. I just think they look so much more unique, and they definitely stand out more when you see them in person. The not so obvious difference in these 3rd prints is the subtle glossy texture on the cardstock. So I can't remember if I actually mentioned it in the last deep dive, but the Australian print for the Jungle non-holos, they also have that same glossy cardstock. I used this picture actually earlier to show the difference in the cardstock. This particular photo is showing the difference between a regular print of Pikachu on the Jungle set versus the one that came from a red Australian pack. So that subtle difference there is the same thing you'll find with these Fossil 3rd prints. And lastly, the 3rd print for Fossil, they actually have a different copyright date than the normal unlimited cards, right? They will have 1999 to 2000 on the bottom instead of just the year 1999. Now, to reiterate, it's only the non-holo commons and uncommons that get the copyright date change, right? There is no current distinguishable differences between the foil prints in each run, i.e. they all have the 1999 copyright date, not the 1999 to 2000 copyright date on the holos. Now that we know about Fossil and its history, how much would this set you back? Let's go ahead and go over the pricing. Well, like I said before, we'll go over the individual pricing. We'll go over first edition and unlimited just in case. Now, keep in mind that all of these prices will fluctuate. It just depends on when you're watching the video. Markets change every day, so these prices aren't going to be 100% accurate, but I try and do like a range. So when I did this, I basically just went through what's the lowest I've seen it sold for and what's the highest, and then you can kind of pick in between. Vintage is very I would say different to modern when it comes to pricing. If one is a bit more mintier than the other one, that could be like an actual $20 difference. It could be even more than that. So you'll kind of see that when you'll see these wacky prices. But let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with Aerodactyl. We're going to do the Unlimited first. The Unlimited runs about $25 to $30. It's always kind of been in that range, to be honest with you. The first editions are about $65 to $100 raw. And then it has a pop count of 71. This is now the Unlimited print in PSA 10s. That basically means when we do pop count, that basically means how many 10s exist, right? It's 610 for the last sold on the Unlimited. There is 203 with the first edition Aerodactyl, and then the last sold about $3,400. The pre-release version of Aerodactyl goes about $45 to $65 raw, and the last sold on PSA 10 was $2,500. It also has a pop count of 62, so slightly less of a pop count than those other ones there. Articuno Unlimited goes for about $45 to $55, and the first edition anywhere from $115 to $150. Pretty popular card, to be honest. The Unlimited pop count is 66, and it last sold for PSA 10 at $950. That's for the Unlimited print there. The first edition has an 148 pop count, and it last sold for $6,100 in a PSA 10. Next up we have Ditto. Unlimited goes for anywhere from like 27 to 35 in that sort of range. First edition anywhere from 87 to 100. The unlimited pop count is 115 with a last sold of $480 in a PSA 10. And then when it comes to the first edition, it has a pop count of 310 and it last sold for $18.23. I think that was in November. The Dragonite in Unlimited goes for $85 to $140. This should be one of the most expensive ones. In first edition, anywhere from $225 to like $385. I've probably even seen $400 as well. The Unlimited has a pop count of 61 and last sold for $3,400. And then when we get to the first edition, it has 234 pop count. And actually, literally 5 days ago, one sold for 20 grand. Which is crazy. The ones before that were selling for like actually 3,000 or 4,000, so that's been manipulated too. Unlimited for Gengar, 115 to 150 and $300 to $400 for a first ed. This is easily the most expensive card. Pop count is 51 for Unlimited, and it last sold for $3,800 in a PSA 10. And then the pop count for the first edition is 181, and it last sold for $10,320. We have Haunter next. The Unlimited goes anywhere from $35 to $40, and then the first edition is 87 to 100 again. And then the pop count for the Unlimited is 131, and it last sold for $600 in a PSA 10. And then the first edition has a pop count of 434, which is actually quite a lot, and the PSA 10 last sold for $18.44. Next up we have Hitmonlee, anywhere from $25 to $37 for the Unlimited version, and then the first edition is $67 to $80, so a bit cheaper there on the first eds for Hitmonlee. Unlimited pop count though is only 27, and one last sold for about $1,000 recently, $999 to be exact. The first edition pop count is 178, and it last sold for $1,500, so not really that big of a price difference between the Unlimited and First Ed there. Hypno is one of the cheaper Unlimiteds. I've seen it go from $15 to $25, even near mint, and the first editions are $50 to $70. The Unlimited has a pop count of 77, which is quite high, and it last sold for $500 in a PSA 10. The first edition has a pop count of 276, and the PSA 10 last sold for about $13.34. And then the Unlimited print for Kabutops goes anywhere from $25 to $30. The first eds run you about $58 to $75, I would say. And then the pop count for the Unlimited is quite small at 46. It last sold for about $1,100, $10.99 to be exact. And then the first edition pop count is 232. Last sold PSA 10 was $22.50. And then we have Lapras next. The Unlimited goes anywhere from $20 to $30. I see a lot of sales at like the $24, $25. First eds go anywhere from $100 to $120. The pop count for the Unlimited is only 51. And it last sold for $19.75. I'm pretty sure this one has a really surprising number for first edition, if I'm correct. The pop count for the first edition is 120, and one just sold this month for 17 grand, 17,500, which is crazy to me. Magneton Unlimited, $13 to $20 on that one, and then the first ed's only $36.50, so definitely one of the cheaper ones. Pop count for the Unlimited is 169, which is actually quite high. And the PSA 10 goes for about $400, last sold recently for that. The first edition has a 407 pop count, which is a lot, and a 10 only sold for $999, so $1,000. The Moltres, the Unlimited, goes anywhere from $50 to $80 near mint, and the first edition anywhere from $140 to $210. I've seen a bit higher than that as well before. Unlimited on the pop count is 96. A PSA 10 last sold for $850. And then when it comes to the first edition, there's 323 pop counts. And then PSA 10 last sold for $2,668. The Muck is definitely the cheapest. The Unlimited goes anywhere from $6 to $10, literally. And the first edition's anywhere from $35 to $45. The pop count for the Unlimited is 284. And then a PSA 10 still last sold for 310, which still doesn't feel bad for how cheap it is to get it unlimited. And then the pop count is 489 on the first eds, and a PSA 10 last sold for $795. Then we have Raichu next. The Unlimited goes anywhere from 30 to 45. The first edition anywhere from 115 to 130. It's very much in that price range. Pop count 47 on the Unlimited, and it last sold for $1,000. It's a pretty low pop count, to be fair, as well. And the first edition pop count is 173, and a PSA 10 last sold for $4,266. Then last we have Zapdos. The Unlimited goes anywhere from 20 to 25. The first edition's anywhere from 100 to 121 now, near mint. And then the pop count for the Unlimited, this is now the corrected holo, I will specify that. PSA 10 last sold for 1,075. I'm sure there's a higher pop count with some of the errors as well. The first edition pop count is 378, and a PSA 10 last sold for $2,300. Now, usually at the end, I'll do like a fun trivia fact or something like that. I don't really have anything for Fossil, but something recently just came up while I was actually recording this and doing this that I thought I'd go ahead and mention right at the end of the video, because technically it is from this set, so it's relatively, it's kind of relevant to what we're about to say here. But I don't like this because this is a prime example of market manipulation. There's one guy that's done it, and now everyone's doing it with some of the commons, but I'm of course referring to Kabuto King. Now, this guy has collected, like, I don't know, thousands of first edition Kabutos from the Fossil set, and in turn, the Kabuto has gone up in price, like, crazily. So, a lot of people are doing this. They're jumping onto the trend of just buying one card and buying every copy on TCG Player, just to be able to basically control the market. And then because there's not as many on the market, the price has skyrocketed. So now, like, a common Kabuto is like $7 or $8. I mean, I've got a couple. I don't know if he wants to buy those as well, but they're not necessarily near mint. They're probably MP, because they're from, you know, my childhood collection. But I thought I'd mention that just because it is Kabuto, and it is specifically the Fossil Kabuto, which is, I would say, one of the most iconic Fossil Pokemon, and as well as, like, one of the most iconic Fossil, like, commons. So, but yeah, I thought I'd just end with that. But otherwise, that is going to do it for today's deep dive. I really, really hope you enjoyed. Like I say, if you did enjoy this, please let me know down below. I actually was going to kind of stop doing this. Like, I did the first two videos. I did the base set, and then I did the jungle, and they just didn't really do well. For how much time I put into it, they just didn't really see that much of an audience. And then, like, 6 months later, they all just kind of started popping off a little bit. So shout out to the Australians. A lot of people down under were watching those, so I appreciate that. But it's kind of inspired me to keep going with it. And also, I've had a lot of people reach out to me personally. They've DM'd me waiting for this video, so I'm happy to finally post it. I hope it was worth the wait. But like I say, we'll continue to do this because I do enjoy learning this stuff. It helps for me too, from a collector. I did learn a lot, especially with the Misprint guide. Like, there's a couple that I really want now with that, so that'll be fun. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.